Right now, somewhere in a shipyard in South Korea or China, welders are cutting steel for a container ship longer than the Empire State Building is tall. It will cost roughly $200 million. It will sail for 25 years. And by the time it touches water, there's a real chance nobody will need it. The clock on this mistake started ticking in 2021. It hasn't stopped. And the industry that placed the order can see the fuse burning. They just can't put it out. To understand how an entire industry talks itself into a $200 billion gamble, you have to understand what happened during the pandemic. For most of modern history, container shipping has been a brutal, low-margin business. Carriers like Maersk, MSC, CMA CGM, and Hapag-Lloyd spent the 2010s locked in a price war so vicious that Hanjin Shipping, once a top 10 carrier, collapsed entirely in 2016, leaving its ships stranded offshore because ports feared they'd never get paid. Then COVID hit, and everything inverted. Locked down consumers stopped buying restaurant meals and started buying exercise bikes, furniture, and electronics. All of it shipped in containers. Ports jammed. Ships queued for weeks off Los Angeles. The spot rate to move a single 40-foot container from Shanghai to the US West Coast, normally under $2,000, reportedly spiked past $20,000 at the peak of the chaos. The result was the greatest profit windfall in maritime history. Industry analysts estimate container lines earned somewhere in the region of $300 billion across 2021 and 2022. More, by some counts, than the industry had made in the previous several decades combined. Maersk alone posted an annual profit around $29 billion. In 2022, briefly making a Danish shipping company more profitable than most of big tech. And here's where the trap snapped shut. Because what do you do when you're a shipping executive sitting on a mountain of cash you never expected to have? You order ships. Enormous ones. MSC ordered so aggressively, it blew past Maersk to become the world's largest container line, building toward a fleet with capacity in the range of 6 million 20-foot containers. CMA CGM, Evergreen, One, Hapag-Lloyd, all of them rushed to the shipyards. By 2023, the global order book had swollen to nearly 30% of the entire existing fleet, by far the largest wave of new capacity ever commissioned, with most deliveries scheduled for 2024 through 2027. And these weren't ordinary vessels. Carriers concentrated their orders in the mega class, ships of 18 to 24,000 container capacity, 400 meters long, 60 meters wide, floating walls of steel. The logic sounded airtight in a boardroom. Bigger ships mean lower cost per container. A 24,000 box giant burns less fuel per container, moved than two smaller ships carrying the same load. New tonnage also meets tightening IMO emissions rules, and many of the orders were dual-fuel vessels that can run on LNG or methanol, a hedge against future carbon regulation. On paper, every individual order made sense, but shipping has a cruel arithmetic problem. A ship ordered in the boom arrives in the bust. It takes roughly 2 to 3 years to build a mega vessel, so the ships ordered at the peak of pandemic, euphoria began sliding down the slipways in 2024, straight into a market that had already turned. Consumers went back to spending on travel and restaurants. The port congestion that had artificially trapped capacity unwound. And freight rates didn't just fall, they cratered. By late 2023, Shanghai to Europe spot rates had reportedly dropped more than 90% from their peak, in some weeks flirting with levels that didn't even cover fuel. The industry swung from record profit to operating losses in under 18 months. Now layer on the physical problem nobody likes to discuss. Most of the world can't even handle these ships. A 24,000 container vessel needs 16 to 17 meters of water depth, cranes tall enough to reach across 24 rows of boxes, and miles of quay. Only a short list of ports. Rotterdam, Antwerp, Singapore, Shanghai, a handful of others can take them fully loaded. Many US East Coast ports spent billions dredging channels and raising bridges, like the famous lifting of the Bayonne Bridge near New York, just to accommodate the previous generation of big ships. The Panama Canal, even after its $9 billion expansion, can't fit the largest class at all. And when drought slashed the canal's water levels in 2023 and 2024, authorities cut daily transits, reminding everyone that the choke points of global trade don't scale just because the ships do. You already know what happens when one of these giants gets it wrong. In March 2021, the Ever Given, 400 meters, 20,000 container slots, wedged itself across the Suez Canal and held roughly $10 billion of trade hostage every single day for 6 days. That wasn't a freak accident. It was a preview. The bigger the ship, the smaller its margin for error, and the more catastrophic the failure when the margin runs out. So what do carriers do with ships nobody needs? They hide the surplus. The first tool is the blank sailing, quietly, canceling a scheduled voyage so the remaining ships sail fuller. In weak weeks, carriers have reportedly blanked double-digit percentages of scheduled capacity on major trade lanes. The second tool is slow steaming. Cut speed a few knots, and suddenly the same loop needs an extra vessel, conveniently soaking up spare ships while saving fuel. The third is the scrapyard, sending older vessels to the beaches of Alang in India or Chattogram in Bangladesh, where workers, often for a few dollars a day, carve them apart by hand. Demolition stayed strangely low through 2024, only because the Red Sea crisis forced ships around the Cape of Good Hope, adding weeks to voyages and temporarily absorbing the glut. Which means the overcapacity didn't disappear. It's been masked by a war risk detour. If the Red Sea fully normalizes, industry estimates suggest the equivalent of well over 1 million containers of capacity gets dumped back onto the market overnight. Who pays for all this? In the boom, you did. Pandemic freight costs fed directly into the price of furniture, appliances, and electronics, and economists flagged shipping as a measurable driver of global inflation. In the bust, the costs just move. Blank sailings mean your retailer's stock misses its window. Slow steaming means longer supply chains and more inventory cost baked into prices. Scrapping booms mean more ships dying on South Asian beaches with the human and environmental toll that entails. And the smaller carriers, the ones without pandemic war chests, face the Hanjin scenario all over again. In a rate war between giants with brand new megaships and rivals with old, debt-laden fleets, the giants are betting they'll be the last ones standing. Overcapacity isn't just a mistake. For the biggest players, it's arguably a weapon. The strangest part? The industry knew. Shipping economists have documented this exact boom and bust cycle since the era of sail. Profits spike, owners overorder, ships arrive late, rates collapse, fleets get scrapped, and the survivors swear it'll never happen again. Right up until the next boom. The pandemic didn't break the cycle. It supersized it. Here's the final twist worth sitting with. Some of those $200 million giants may never see a profitable year, yet carriers keep ordering, because the next fight isn't about capacity at all. It's about fuel. Whoever guesses right on methanol, LNG, or ammonia owns the 2030s. Whoever guesses wrong owns a very large, very expensive museum piece. The countdown on the order book is still running, and the same industry that bet the pandemic would last forever is now betting it can predict the future of energy. If you want to see how badly that kind of bet can end, look up what happens when a ship owner simply abandons a vessel, and the crew still on board. That story is darker than any balance sheet.